The indifferent Prince Yun Zijin, who disguised himself as sick and weak, married the foolish young lady Liu Ruoyuan of the Shangshu family, but was too lazy to take a glance at her because he knew that the princess was just a decoration to disguise his identity. On her wedding night, the queen hanged herself the next day. In the main hall of the palace, the queen spoke with righteous words, causing a commotion and separation, listing the defects of the prince. Weakness, mouse bile, and stinginess. The prince's indifferent face cracked open and he said, The emperor approved the queen's return to her mother's house, and she smiled happily and said, I swear to be single to the end. The prince shed tears and said, I have been despised by others. What should I do? Then the prince wears a vest and chases the queen, seeking recognition. Please take a look at me. Please let me love you, pet you, and take care of you. Single princess. This. Who are you? Clothes maidservant. The queen is single and wealthy, pursuing a career. Don't worry, this prince. Uncle. The princess is my sister. What are you kneeling and licking? Miss Beijing Group. With the beauty and intelligence of the queen, the men who want to love, dote on, and raise her line up 3 miles away. Please don't cut in line, prince, and slowly line up from behind. Prince's depressed face. It's so sad, being dumped by the same woman in 2 lifetimes. The prince's painful face said, I regret it so much. The tears I'm shedding now are the water that entered my mind back then. Keywords of the novel. Has the prince pursued his wife at the crematorium? No pop-ups. Has the prince pursued his wife at the crematorium? Download the full text. Has the prince pursued his wife at the crematorium? Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. She's just a chess piece. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. She's just a chess piece. In the 3rd month of Dingyun Kingdom, it is the Fire Observation Festival. Tonight's action is only allowed to succeed, not to fail. Jinga's stunning face showed a stern expression. She is the Kabuki Queen of Chima Honglu, one of the 3 beauties of Dingyun Kingdom, and also a secret assassin spy secretly raised by the Crown Prince. Flower towers were erected on both sides of the moat, and during the annual fire-watching festival, nobles and ministers gathered by the river to watch the night song, dance, and fireworks performances. Jinga received instructions from the Crown Prince. Tonight, while offering a dance, assassinate Prince Jing, a sickly and indifferent prince. Together with her, there are several sisters in Chima Honglu who are her most trusted people. Especially for Lingyi, she feels like siblings with Jinga. The Crown Prince arranged a way out for her. Escaped from the moat, the carriage waited outside the city, and sent her to Biting Kingdom overnight. Jinga hid a smoke bomb in her sleeve. If she can't get close to the moat, smoke can cover her escape from the living sky. Everything is ready. Thinking of the Crown Prince's warm and tender gaze, her heart was filled with happiness. 7 years have passed, and her infatuation and love for the Crown Prince have finally paid off after tonight. The Crown Prince made a promise to her. On the day he ascends the throne, she will be his concubine Jing. She doesn't care about not being a noble consort. She just wants to have the Crown Prince's love for her. The cheerful music continued incessantly, and the young and beautiful dancers danced gracefully by the riverbank. Jinga in the middle is dressed in a light and soft powder coat, with a slender waist and limbs as soft as bones. Everyone's gaze was focused on her, and the men couldn't help but become fascinated. Jinga is looking at her 3rd brother, Jinga and Jingwang are also destined, right? Crown Prince Yun Zijin glanced at Jingwang with a sideways glance and joked. Jingwang Yun Zijin remained silent. He sat in a light veil tent, looking weak and uncontrollable. He has been weak since childhood and cannot withstand wind and sun. Usually outside, either wear a hat and veil, or hide in a tent. Jinga twisted her waist with the music and gradually approached Yun Zijin. There is a highly poisonous sleeve arrow hidden in her long sleeve, and within a distance of about 5 steps, Prince Jing will undoubtedly die. The gentle breeze brushed against the light veil curtain, causing the candles inside to sway slightly. Yun Zijin carried the light and shadow on his back, his expression unclear, but his eyes were dark and bright, staring at Jinga. For some reason, Jinga felt a hint of panic in her heart. She danced lightly and spun in place. By the moat, there were guards arranged by the crown prince to receive them. Ling Yi and Jiang Hua were dancing waist drums and were approaching the left and right sides of Prince Jing. Even if she misses a single hit, the two of them can still take action to remedy it. The reception and escape routes are foolproof. Just wait for her to take action. Third brother, indeed this Jinga has taken a liking to you. She is the beauty of the flower queen in the Chimo Red Mansion, and third brother has great fortune. Suddenly, Min Wang Yun Sai next to her smiled. Second prince, you're joking. Yun Zijin turned his head and said. He spoke to Yun Sai through a veil. At this moment, the music was high-pitched, and Jinga waved her long sleeves, throwing out a black sleeve arrow. Whoosh! Yun Zijin leaned slightly towards the direction of Yun Sai. The sleeve arrow flew past his temples and hit a maid behind him. The maid fell to the ground with a "ah" sound. There's an assassin, someone shouted. The scene was in chaos. The screams of women echoed everywhere. Lingyi and Jianghua were both lying on the ground, looking panicked. Jinga felt uneasy and immediately turned around to rush towards the moat. As long as she jumps into the river, she can escape outside the city. However, there were suddenly many guards by the moat, with bows and arrows in their hands, all aimed at her. This slut, how dare you assassinate? Kill without mercy. The roar of Crown Prince Yun Zijin echoed from behind. Jinga was suddenly shocked and couldn't believe it. She gritted her teeth, threw smoke grenades from her sleeve, and jumped forward at the same time. The smoke bomb fell to the ground with a clanging sound, but no thick smoke emerged. Immediately after, countless feather arrows shot towards Jinga. 10,000 arrows pierced through the heart, she became a living target. At the moment of falling to the ground, a pair of dragon-patterned purple boots walked up to her. A cold and heartless voice came into her ear. Someone, drag this slut out and divide him into 5 pieces. Jinga is covered in blood. A heart is also shot through. She remembered the promise he had made, Jinga, you are the woman I love the most in my life. I want to share the glory and wealth of this world with you. Everything is fake. Originally, she was just a chess piece that could be sacrificed at any time in his heart. The guard rudely dragged Jinga away. Her weak body was filled with sharp arrows, leaving a long bloodstain on the ground. The cold wind blew by, feeling extremely desolate. At this moment, Lingyi, who was lying on the ground, quietly looked up and a smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. This scene fell into Jinga's eyes. It was the last scene she saw in her life. Why? Lingyi, her best sisters, why? Jinga died without closing her eyes. The new book is here, and the little angels are very supportive. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Blood Debt and Blood Compensation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Blood Debt and Blood Compensation. Late at night, people are still. In the newlywed room of Prince Jing's mansion, there was a burst of mournful cries from a woman. Whispering. Miss, ah. The maid Chi threw herself on the bride, crying her nose and tears. Jinga slightly opened her eyes and saw the bright red curtain, her mind a bit confused. Am I alive again? Complex emotions surged from the bottom of my heart. After a while, she finally understood where and what was happening in front of her. The bride lying in the curtain is the eldest daughter of the Minister of Rights. Her name is Liu Ruoyuan, she is 17 years old and has just married Prince Jing Yun Zijin today. Although she has an outstanding appearance and is known as one of the three beauties of Dingyun Kingdom, she has a hot temper, is foolish and clumsy, and cannot play music, chess, calligraphy, painting, or embroider or sew. She is a famous, stupid beauty, in the capital city. Tonight, the bridal chamber is full of flowers and candles, and the groom Yun Zijin has not come to the new house. Liu Ruoyuan was angry and furious, saying, "Marry a sick and weak prince, and be a widow all your life. It's better to die than die." In a fit of anger, he hung himself in his new house. When she was rescued, she had already passed away. Then, amidst a burst of mournful cries, Jinga opened her eyes. Prince Jing, disguised as a sickly and vicious disciple. She remembered the indifferent face hidden behind the light veil curtain, and a hint of fear loomed in her heart. Inexplicably, there was a slight tremble in the gallbladder. She was once the first spy around the crown prince. She knows everything about the families of officials and officials of all sizes in the capital like the back of her hand, and knows everything very well. The crown prince received intelligence that Prince Jingwang Yun Zijin secretly raised secret guards and spies. So he sent someone to infiltrate Prince Jing's mansion to inquire about the news. As a result, those people disappeared without a trace. Yun Zijin's actions are mysterious and profound. The crown prince was filled with fear and anxiety, so he planned to assassinate him during the fire-watching festival. Hiss. The pain in her heart was like a thorn in a cone. If her mission failed, the crown prince would take her life. In the man's heart, power, throne, interests always more important than her, thousands and thousands of times. But without her, without those poor women who worked hard for him, how could that man ascend to the throne? Jinga clenched her fists tightly. She suppressed the pain in her heart and silently made a vow. Even if you reach the highest point, I will make you fall to the lowest point. Yun Zijin, do you want to become an emperor? I will make you only dream in your lifetime. She opened her eyes. Looking at the unfamiliar new house, let out a deep breath. From now on, she will be the Grand Miss of the Shangshu mansion, Liu Ruoyuan. Miss, you have finally woken up. You scared the servant to death, whimpering. Chu Yi cried with tears on her face. If you don't agree, hang yourself. Only her foolish young lady can do it. I want to drink water. The foolish young lady felt the red mark on her neck, which was burning and painful, and she felt even more thirsty. Chi quickly went to pour water and sobbed, asking, "Marry well into the royal family, why should you seek death?" The little maid stared straight at her young lady, feeling as if she had changed her appearance after hanging just now. Still an extremely silky goose-egg face, delicate eyebrows and eyes, cherry-like red lips, a pair of incredibly pure and beautiful apricot eyes, like the water of autumn waves, exuding a tender and affectionate gaze. But her temperament suddenly changed. It is no longer a dull and rude behavior, or deliberately making expressions, frowning and making eyes, awkward and artificial. At this moment, Liu Ruoyuan leaned against the head of the bed, her bright makeup had been washed off and she appeared pure and elegant, like a lotus blooming in the water. Her whole body exuded a natural beauty and elegance, and her eyes were calm and composed, appearing very introverted. Miss. Chi couldn't help but let out a soft cry. Such a beautiful young lady, her actions of drinking water are so endearing that she can't bear to disturb her. Liu Ruoyuan looked up at her and saw that the little maid in front of him was 15 or 16 years old, with a very delicate appearance and a charming expression. She was a young beauty. But there was a red and swollen mark on her fair little face, as if she had been slapped. She has just been reborn into the body of the original owner, and her memories and emotions need to blend in for a while. After looking at the maid Chui for a while, she slowly spoke up and asked, "What's wrong with your face?" In her memory, Chui was the close mate of the original owner and had always been loyal to the original owner. When someone bullies the original owner, Chui always stands up and doesn't hesitate to argue with others. However, the original owner had a somewhat indifferent personality and was not very kind to Chui. Sometimes he became irritable and even vented his anger on Chui. The original owner had a good heart, but was dull and had a bad temper. But Chui is a clever little girl, and she has a lot of personality. Liu Ruoyuan had a slight liking for her. He raised his hand and lightly stroked her cheek, with a hint of heartache in his tone. "It seems like someone hit you. Does it hurt?" Chui was slightly stunned, and her eyes immediately turned red. The young lady had never cared about her so much before. She shook her head and said, it doesn't hurt at all." Speaking, I couldn't help feeling sad, bit my lips, and silently shed tears. Just now, Liu Ruoyuan hung herself, and Chui exerted all her strength to rescue her from the beam. In a hurry, she called the people of the royal family to call a doctor, but was slapped in the face by a fierce woman who scolded her for causing trouble. Liu Ruoyuan closed his eyes and some memory fragments flashed through his mind. When she had just passed through her soul, she faintly heard someone beating Chui and cursing at her, "Why don't you die with that idiot, troublemaker?" She pursed a cold curve at the corner of her mouth and said softly, "Chui, don't be afraid, I will definitely help you recover this debt." Chui fixed her eyes on her, excitedly speechless, nodding incessantly. She really likes the young lady, she is so handsome. At this moment, I suddenly saw a shadow outside the door, clearly someone eavesdropping on the situation inside the house. Liu Ruoyuan lowered his head and lowered his eyes, finishing the tea in his cup. A hidden thought flashed through his eyes. King Jing suspects her. So send someone to secretly monitor and investigate. Liu Ruoyuan felt a chill in his heart, suddenly feeling a chill for the original owner. On the wedding night, Prince Jing deliberately neglected the bride, and such humiliation was already excessive. At this moment, someone was actually sent to eavesdrop on the corner of the wall. What did this dog man do? It's like a dog out of the sky. After a while, she put down her teacup and deliberately exclaimed angrily, "I am as beautiful as a flower, with an unparalleled beauty. Marrying a sickly prince is already an injustice. Unexpectedly, he is as timid as a mouse and dare not even enter the bridal chamber. Let me be a widow, it's not more tragic than death. I would rather hang myself to death than spend my whole life with a cowardly man." The figure outside the door stumbled for a moment, then turned around and hurriedly left. Liu Ruoyuan's eyes flickered and he breathed a sigh of relief. Staying in Prince Jing's mansion is too dangerous. She needs to find a way to request the emperor's order to separate her from Yun Zijin. In her previous life, she disregarded danger and fell in love with Yun Zijin, but ended up with countless arrows piercing her heart and her body torn apart. It's so easy to be reborn, and I don't want to end my life in the hands of Prince Jing. Yun Zijin and Yun Zijin are both of the same kind and not of the same kind. Jinga certainly cannot die in vain. She wants to reclaim what originally belonged to her. But the premise is that this life must live well. Liu Ruoyuan's eyes were deep and filled with a faint glow. She is someone who has died once and fully understands that even men cannot be trusted. Reviving her life, she must always remind herself. By working hard with one's own hands, one can truly live a happy life and reach the pinnacle of life. First, follow Prince Jing and leave, then return to his mother's Shangshu mansion to cultivate strength and influence. Find the dog man to avenge and settle accounts. Let him repay the debt with blood. The saying goes, once bitten by a snake, twice afraid of grass ropes. If she doesn't meet a good person in this life, she would rather die alone and never get married. In short, she no longer believes in men's promises. If men keep their promises, even sows can climb trees. Isn't it good to live a happy life alone? What should a man do? What kind of disguised sick King Jing? Get away from her. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. The end of offending the prince. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. The end of offending the prince. Jingwang Mansion, Fish and Wild Goose Pavilion. Yun Zijin sat on a soft couch by the window. In front of him was a sandalwood chess table, with a black chip in his hand, playing a remaining game of chess. He was dressed in a silver blue embroidered brocade robe, with a pair of sword eyebrows slightly raised, and a deep cold light in his eyes. His expression appeared somewhat sharp. Wearing a black silver and black iron ring on her fair and powerful fingers, she was listening to the report from her subordinate guard Ruoyuan. The princess said, "The prince is as timid as a mouse." Ruoyuan looked carefully at his prince, hesitated for a moment, and continued, "She said, she doesn't want to be a widow, she doesn't want to spend a lifetime with a coward. He has never seen such a foolish woman before. How dare to curse his family prince at Prince Jing's mansion, and he cursed so harshly." Yun Zijin held the chess piece and stopped in mid-air, his eyes darkening. The arrogant and fierce feeling between his eyebrows suddenly spread, "Shouhua duo. You coward. That foolish woman. I really don't know how to write dead characters." He looked up at Ruoyuan with a cold indifference in his eyes, and a sense of majestic oppression suddenly appeared in the air. "Go, give the queen an old plain clothes and ask her to change them. She said that the king is weak and cannot sleep well. She is ordered to go to the side room tonight to pray for blessings, so that the king can sleep soundly." Yun Zijin had an extreme aversion to Liu Ruoyuan and married a foolish princess back. He had already been ridiculed by people all over the capital, and he didn't care about it. Unfortunately, this foolish woman deliberately played a game of hard to get with him in order to attract his attention, which made him feel disgusted. Hanging on the wedding night. Oh, this play is really exciting. Isn't she bold and daring? Aren't we going to hang and beg for death? Then he will arrange more tasks for her. Want to live a peaceful life in the royal mansion. Let her dream. After listening to the prince's arrangement, Ruoyuan's mouth twitched and he observed a moment of silence for the queen. "What will happen if you offend our prince? What did this foolish princess do? She cried, made a scene, and hung herself. The prince is most annoyed by such a playboy, she will suffer in the future." In the new house. Liu Ruoyuan stared at the old plain clothes sent by his mother. Law, and his expression suddenly cracked. It was unbelievable. God wouldn't have intentionally tricked her, would he? Why treat her so cruelly? Having died a tragic death in a previous life, it's easy to be reborn and still be bullied and humiliated by men. Liu Ruoyuan looked up at the red candles on the table and saw the little tears dripping from them, causing a sense of desolation in his heart. "At this moment, I feel suffocated and uncomfortable in my heart, as if being pressed down by 1,000 pounds of heavy boulders, almost suffocating. This is the wedding night. The bride has just married into Prince Jing's mansion and does not seek grand ceremonies or favor from Prince Jing. She only wants to spend a peaceful night. But what kind of nonsense did Yun Zijin do? The bridal chamber candle asks the bride to wear an old dress and go to the cold side room to watch the night. The original owner, Lady Gui, was a young lady of the Shangshu. She was 17 years old and had an unparalleled appearance. She married openly as the legitimate queen of the Jingwang mansion. Why was she subjected to humiliation and devastation? Dog man. Bullying people too much. She didn't expect anything wrong. Prince Jing was indeed a cunning and ruthless person. What is this done by a normal person? This guy not only has a dark heart, but also a pervert. She originally had no grudges or grievances with Prince Jing, but the assassination attempt in the previous life was unsuccessful. After all, neither of them owed each other anything. Reviving her life, she turned a blind eye and pretended not to know him, which can be considered as turning the page. She is just very sensitive and has an intuition that this man is not easy to deal with. She needs to find a way to avoid him from afar. Whether it's divorce or divorce. Anyway, separate from him as soon as possible, and from then on, the well water will not invade the river. Who would have thought, before she could take action, the other party started to take action against her. The more she thought about it, the more angry she became, and it was not worth it to replace the original owner. Miss, as soon as she gets married, she hangs herself. Even if she doesn't die, she will have to be ruined by the unscrupulous prince tonight. However, since she has replaced the original owner, she needs to recover some interest for the Miss Liu family. Liu Ruoyuan's mouth curved slightly, and a chill appeared in his eyes. In her past life, she was the most beautiful woman in the Chimo Red Mansion. Although she did not sell herself, there were still many nobles who coveted her beauty and talent, dreaming of forcibly snatching her away. So she has long developed the ability to deal with men. Whether it's domineering, dark-bellied, rough, or vicious, she has a way to hold on to her weaknesses and make dog men dare not be reckless. Who wouldn't know how to act? If King Jing wants to watch the play, she will accompany him to the end. Liu Ruoyuan brewed his emotions for a while, pondering the character and psychology of the foolish young lady. She suddenly screamed at the top of her lungs. "Woo woo woo, why am I so pitiful? Why do I have to let them guard the night? Where is the side room? They are most afraid of the dark." Chi saw her crying so badly that she was also filled with sadness and followed suit. She said with red circles in her eyes, "Miss, don't be afraid. I'll be with you." She felt that her young lady was living a humiliating life. These are not the days that the queen lives, not even ordinary women who marry peddlers and servants. Prince Jing is too annoying. A sick seedling doesn't take good care of himself, and he messes around aimlessly in the middle of the night. "Miss, it's too unlucky to marry such a despicable person." Coming out of the new house, Chi supported her all the way from the corridor to the side room. Liu Ruoyuan first whimpered and wept, and then her howls could be heard throughout the entire Jingwang mansion. The old woman leading the way in front has a painful brain. This foolish princess looks like a beauty, soft and weak, but unexpectedly her voice is quite loud, making people's ears buzzing. Even if all the maids and mother-in-law in the royal mansion were added, they couldn't howl at her. The old lady is very upset. She had a fierce expression on her face and said, "Why cry? This is the royal mansion, not the place where you mourn." Chi quickly stood in front of Liu Ruoyuan and said, "Don't speak so harshly this big night. Scare my young lady, she's timid." Before she could finish speaking, Chi slapped her face with a loud bang. The old woman shouted fiercely, "Damn girl, do you understand the rules? Is there a place for you to interject here?" Just as he was about to continue cursing, a figure suddenly flashed in front of him. Liu Ruoyuan stepped forward and grabbed her hair. The young lady cried and exclaimed, "Why are you scaring people? You know they are timid and afraid." "Woo woo woo." She let out a flurry of her hands. Grabbed the old lady's hair into a bird's nest. I casually pulled down a few strands of hair. It's this fierce woman who slapped Chi twice tonight for no reason. Why don't she give her a good lesson? The entire royal family treats her like a dead person, right? The ferocious woman screamed in pain. Her hair was scattered, and Liu Ruoyuan scratched several bloodstains on her face. She also got 2 kicks on her stomach. Kicking only made her heart, liver, and lungs ache, almost spitting out a mouthful of blood. At this moment, 2 women rushed over and easily pulled Liu Ruoyuan apart. The fierce woman had already rolled her eyes and collapsed on the ground, with no breath in. 2 women said, "The queen is quite ruthless in her actions. It doesn't seem like a small white flower." Liu Ruoyuan sobbed for a moment and wiped away the non-existent tears. "Isn't it to pray for the prince? Where is the side room? Take me there quickly." When she was crying just now, she was completely pretending, just putting on a show. At this moment, the crying quickly subsided, leaving the 2 women stunned. They thought they were dizzy, and the crying queen they just saw was not her. Liu Ruoyuan stopped howling and suddenly caught a glimpse of a figure lurking in the dark at the corner of the corridor. Her eyes lit up instantly. "Madun, you're here to monitor her again. She took a deep breath and felt a bit annoyed. It seems that this play must be played to the end. A woman helped the fierce woman who was about to faint away. Liu Ruoyuan followed behind another woman and walked forward, starting to whimper and wipe away tears. Originally, she was pretending to cry, but was infected by the dark and desolate atmosphere around her. She cried and all the misfortunes of her past life and present life surged in her heart. Unable to suppress her sadness and grief, tears couldn't stop flowing down her face, and her crying became real. At this moment, it was night, and the palace was silent. Only her crying voice was faintly visible, grief piercing through the bones, appearing extremely desolate. She also shed tears along the way, feeling both sad and angry in her heart. These bad guys are torturing my young lady. Just now, Liu Ruoyuan gave the wicked woman a fierce lesson for her, causing turmoil in Chi's heart. He felt that he had completely devoted his life to the young lady. She was born to be Mrs. Person, and died to be Mrs. Ghost. Jing Wang, that villain, is not worthy of Mississippi. Not only sickly and weak, but also a pervert. Let the young lady pray for his blessings. Humph, I wish him a lifetime of extreme illness. He can't survive, can't he? Chi was both angry and sad. When her eldest daughter was unmarried, she was doing well in her mother's family and had never cried so badly before. It's good now, no one pays attention to hanging me and I have to leave my new house to watch the night. Why is it so pitiful? Woo-woo, I'm going to cry to death. Rui Zheng, hiding in the dark corner of the corridor, heard the mournful cries of the two and inexplicably felt a wave of sadness. I feel a bit uncomfortable in my heart. The queen and the little maid around her are quite pitiful. The two girls didn't do anything outrageous either. Is it a bit cruel and psychologically gloomy for the prince to act so recklessly? However, his prince has always been known for his abnormal and gloomy demeanor, and his persona is not pleasing, so no woman in the entire capital likes him. Of course, men don't like him either. In short, he is despised by others, and no one cares about him. Finally arrived at the side room, the old lady hung the lantern at the door. Liu Ruoyuan looked up and realized that this was a dilapidated house that had long been abandoned and deserted. The room was small and rudimentary, with a tattered curtain hanging from a low bed, 2 oil lamps placed on the table, and an incense stick inserted into the incense burner. The mother-in-law led the two into the room, looked at them with disdain, and said calmly, "The princess is here to pray for blessings. May the prince have a comfortable sleep tonight." After speaking, he turned around and left, closing the door. There was only Liu Ruoyuan and Chi left in the room, and only a musty sour smell could be smelled. A thick layer of ash has accumulated on the low couch. Liu Ruoyuan looked in his eyes and felt a faint sourness in his heart. In her past life, she had no father or mother. At the age of 5, she was bought away and suffered countless hardships. She was trained as a killer spy and sold into the Qimo Red Chamber as a flower queen at the age of 13. She remembers the first day she entered the Qimo Honglu and was locked in such a dilapidated room. The doors and windows were leaking, the whole room was sour and smelly, and dust and spider webs were everywhere. At that time, she secretly swore that she would never let herself fall into such a place again in this life. Reborn for a lifetime, she surprisingly wants to live in such a shabby house again. Humph, the dog prince wants to sleep comfortably. He's really thinking beautifully. Liu Ruoyuan stopped sobbing and suddenly sneered, "Miss, I'll surprise him all night and make him excited until dawn." Chui was stunned. "Miss, you're really stimulated. Can you change your face so quickly?" She asked in a daze, "Miss, why don't you cry? There's no one in this room to pity me, who should I cry for?" Liu Ruoyuan wiped her tears, suppressed her sadness, and muttered. She looked around the room and instructed Chi to fetch a brazier and some firewood. Spring is chilly, and the night is too cold. We need to light a fire to keep warm, otherwise we won't be able to stay until tomorrow morning, and the two of us will freeze stiff. She said it's less than a month since the assassination during the fire-watching festival. It's still March at this time, and the night is indeed a bit cold. However, her idea is not to sit idly by. If someone bullies her, she will reclaim the debt. Okay, just order a large fire basin for the main points. Let all the people in the royal mansion get warm. Qi went to fetch the brazier and firewood, and Liu Ruoyuan sat on the couch by the window, gradually calming down. No matter how much pain there is, life still has to go on. Being able to live again is her luck. She cannot live a life of sadness and sorrow, shedding tears on her face. Isn't that making the dog man even more proud? King Jing thinks she's a fool, thinks she's easy to bully, can be manipulated and humiliated at will. Okay, then let him taste her tricks. Let him keep his eyes wide open. What price does he have to pay for bullying weak women? Liu Ruoyuan was calculating in his heart that he would make a fuss for Prince Jing tonight. Then I will go to the palace tomorrow to meet with the emperor and take the opportunity to find an excuse to handle the matter of separation. If everything goes smoothly, she can easily return to her mother's house on the third day of her wedding. Little angels, join the bookshelf. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. The Palace is Haunted. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. The palace is haunted. Inside the side room, oil lamps and flames flicker. Liu Ruoyuan was lost in thought when he suddenly heard a rustling sound outside the window, as if someone was opening the window. I died so miserably. I am the top flower leader of Qima Honglu, I am Jinga. A mournful voice drifted in from the window, and Liu Ruoyuan's scalp exploded, causing him to be stunned. Quiet song. She suddenly turned her head and saw that the window of Shaoxian was lifted open, and a white and dense hand came in from outside. Ah, the female ghost. Qi had just come in from outside when she saw one hand opening the window and a green-faced and fanged female ghost crawling in from outside. She immediately shouted and the brazier and firewood fell all over the ground. Jinga, I am Jinga. The female ghost had climbed onto the bed by the window and heard someone exclaim in surprise, emitting a more desolate and chilly voice. Liu Ruoyuan remained calm. Of course, she didn't believe in ghosts. At this point, she had already heard the voice of the female ghost. Kai Ning, the dancer of the Qimo Red Chamber. Kai Ning. Why is she in the Prince Jing's mansion? There are 6 unparalleled dancers in Qima Honglu. Apart from Jinga, who is a trusted confidant of the Crown Prince, the other 5 are also spies raised by the Crown Prince, each with their own unique skills. Kai Ning is the youngest, only 16 years old, 4 years younger than Jinga. She always likes to call Jinga sister and stays by her side when she has nothing to do. On the night of the Guanhua Festival assassination, Kai Ning did not participate in the operation. The former belle and beauty disappeared, and the Qimo Red Mansion was also burned out. Sisters scattered everywhere. I couldn't kill King Jing, and I was unwilling to die. It was the same thing to find you, Princess Jing, to avenge myself. Kai Ning climbed in from the window and jumped at Liu Ruoyuan with teeth and claws open. Jinga's mission to assassinate King Jing failed and was brutally dismembered. Afterwards, the Crown Prince was ordered to investigate the mastermind behind the scenes and found out that Jinga was a spy of the Northern Tang Kingdom, while the Qimo Red Mansion was also burned down that night. After conducting an investigation, the Crown Prince reported to the Emperor that all other dancers came from innocent backgrounds and were sold to the families of imperial officials as concubines and maids. In this way, Kai Ning was sent to Prince Jing's mansion by the Crown Prince, actually hoping that she would continue to be a spy and investigate all the secrets of Yun Zijin on behalf of the Crown Prince. But Kai Ning is determined to avenge Jinga and fulfill her unfinished wish. Entering Prince Jing's mansion for almost a month, she didn't find a chance to approach Prince Jing, so she turned her attention to Princess Jing. On the night of the wedding, if the queen is scared crazy, Prince Jing will also get into trouble. Caning disguised herself as a female ghost and followed the queen all the way, coming to the side room to scare her. Liu Ruoyuan knew Caning's temperament best, and immediately understood that she was doing this to help her sisters sing quietly. She could not help feeling her nose sour and her heart touched. On the night of the fire festival, Jinga died tragically, thinking that a wisp of fragrant soul would drift away and no one would remember her again. Unexpectedly, there was a Caning who foolishly pretended to be a female ghost in the Prince Jing's mansion, regardless of whether it was useful or not, just to breathe a sigh of relief for Jinga. What a silly girl. She dodged the attack of the female ghost, and Chui at the door rolled her eyes in fear. She turned around and ran away, shouting loudly, "There is a female ghost." At this moment, voices came from all directions, and Caning saw that Liu Ruoyuan was not afraid of her at all. Instead, she had no way to do anything. She said ominously, "Princess Jing, if you meet me today, it will be a dead end." She pounced again, reaching out her hands to grab Liu Ruoyuan's neck. Liu Ruoyuan's mind was spinning rapidly, and soon someone would come over. She must not let Caning fall into danger. At the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of the incense burner next to her. With quick eyes and quick hands, she picked up the incense burner and threw it in front of her. The ashes scattered on Caning's face, instantly dispersing a mist that made her unable to see clearly in front of her. "Princess Jing, you can't escape." Caning waved her hands, still persistently wanting to catch Liu Ruoyuan. The voices outside were getting closer and closer, and Liu Ruoyuan saw that there was no time to let Caning escape. She made a quick decision and raised her hand to knock over the oil lamp, lighting the curtains on the bed and immediately igniting a raging fire. Her original plan was to accidentally knock over the brazier and burn down the side room, intentionally adding some blockage to Yun Zijin. Unexpectedly, a female ghost came in halfway. Although it almost ruined her good deed, it finally didn't affect the progress of the plan. Caning saw a big fire raging everywhere, with flames and black smoke in front of her. However, she couldn't see the figure of Liu Ruoyuan. She was both shocked and frightened, waving her hands in confusion and shouting, "Where are you?" Liu Ruoyuan took a step forward and tightly pressed her wrist, saying coldly, "If you don't want to burn yourself, come with me." A big fire broke out through the hall, and the wooden beds, firewood, lamp oil, curtains in the side rooms were burning with a crackling sound. The flames were strong, and the night sky was dyed red. The royal palace was beating gongs and drums, and the guards and maids were all in a hurry to put out the fire. No one paid attention to whether there was anyone in the side room. Chi stood outside the side room, watching the raging fire in front of her. She was heartbroken and stomped her feet while crying, Miss is still inside." The steward of the royal mansion heard the shouting and almost scared his soul away. He shouted loudly, "Save the princess! Save the princess! Lord, why did you ask the queen to come to the broken house to guard the night? This time, you've made a fortune playing." The flames burned into a sheet, and heat waves rolled in. Everyone stood at a distance, unable to get closer at all. Seeing the side room collapse, they all looked at the flames, shook their heads and sighed. Not to mention that the queen is a delicate woman, even a person made of refined iron is now burned to ashes. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. The Hidden Situation of Hanging. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. The Hidden Situation of Hanging. The Jingwang mansion caught fire at night, with a row of remote side rooms burned to ashes and flattened to the ground. Yun Zijin was wearing a silver blue light gauze hat, standing on a flat ground covered in smoke and dust, with a furrowed brow, a cold complexion, and a chill in his heart. He didn't want the woman's life, but unexpectedly his fingertips were cold, slightly curled up, tightly gripping his sleeve. A bitter and indescribable bitterness emanated from my mouth, and I felt my throat dry. A deep sense of guilt surged in my heart. This feeling of regret, disappointment, regret, and pain seemed to pull his memories back in the past, like the great fire he had personally experienced before. Chi crouched on the ground, holding her legs and sobbing bitterly, "Miss, Mississippi." Ruoyuan beside him sighed repeatedly, feeling unbearable in his heart. He was a good young lady and didn't make any mistakes. Just because he married his prince, he was burned alive on his wedding night. The most tragic thing in the world is none other than this. He silently murmured in his heart, "Miss Liu, please reincarnate well, go to a good family, remember to stay away from the prince in the next life, and it won't be so miserable. Cherish life and stay away from the gloomy prince. Ruoyuan, find the remains of the queen and bury them properly," said the gloomy prince slowly. Ruoyuan quickly instructed his subordinates, "Go ahead and sweep the queen out of the ash pile, put her in a box. No, put her in a coffin for a thick burial." The people under their hands looked at each other, glanced at the burnt ashes on the ground, and a puzzled expression appeared on their faces. Where are the queen and her belongings? They only saw a pile of ash. How to scan, this is too difficult, isn't it? Ruoyuan raised his hand and waved it, forcing his subordinates to grit their heads and move forward, using brooms to sweep the ashes bit by bit, gathering a pile of scattered cigarette ash together. "Slow down, light up, don't step on the queen's feet." "What about you? You idiot, don't have long eyes, that's the queen's head over there." Ruoyuan instructed to sweep the dust while stomping his foot to teach others a lesson. Chi squatting on the ground. She couldn't hold back her tears and began to cry bitterly, "Miss, you're so pitiful. You've turned into ashes. I recognize you when you turn into ashes. Don't be afraid, I'll gather your arms, legs, body, head together, make sure you're all bearded and all tailed, one thing at a time, and then take you home." Liu Ruoyuan, who had just arrived, said, She walked closer to the crowd with a curious expression on her face and asked, "Hey, what are you sweeping tonight? Who turned into dust?" "Everyone." At the moment they saw Liu Ruoyuan, they seemed to have seen a ghost, their hands and feet were weak, and they panicked and threw away their brooms. Ruoyuan was so scared that he jumped up and said, "Wang, princess." Chi suddenly stood up and threw herself onto Liu Ruoyuan, with a runny nose and tears in her eyes. "Miss, you haven't died. It's great, it's great. I knew you were lucky and destined, and you definitely won't die," she said. Liu Ruoyuan reached out and rubbed her head. "Who was crying so much just now, howling so loudly that the entire palace could hear her?" "Don't worry, I just arrived at the Wang mansion and haven't started causing harm yet. How can I be willing to die?" she comforted Chi. "Everyone. Has the queen's brain burned out?" In front of the prince, she openly said she wanted to cause trouble to people. A gloomy prince had a calm face, shining through the veil of a bamboo hat, with a faint darkness in his eyes, staring fixedly at Liu Ruoyuan. He carefully looked up and down several times, and saw that she was not injured. He inexplicably breathed a sigh of relief in his heart, and the tight corners of his mouth curved. "Prince." Liu Ruoyuan didn't notice the man's gaze, although he couldn't see the expression behind the veil, he knew he was staring at her. Looking at the woman in front of him in disheveled clothes, with a beautiful little face smoked black and eyes shining with excitement, Yun Zijin felt a sense of suffocation in his heart, unable to describe what it was like. Let her go to the side room to pray for blessings, just a small punishment for her, and then she made a scene of burning the house, destroying people, and turning into ashes. I almost scared his soul out of it. Fortunately, nothing happened to her, otherwise he couldn't imagine what he would feel after burying a pile of ashes. Yun Zijin's heart was filled with waves, but his face remained calm and his gaze was unusually indifferent. He looked at Liu Ruoyuan through a light veil. "There are rumors in the capital that the young lady of Liu Shangshu is a fool. So, was she unintentional or intentional about burning the house tonight?" At this moment, Liu Ruoyuan was also looking at him, and their eyes met. At night, the light was dim. Although some servants were carrying lanterns, it was still dark and hazy. Yun Zijin wore a veil and hat on his head, making it difficult to see his face clearly. Liu Ruoyuan stared at him for a while, with mixed feelings in his heart, unable to describe what he felt. At the moment her soul pierced, she borrowed the identity of the Miss Liu from the Liu family. So the man in front of her, who disguised himself as sick and wore a veil all day, was her husband from now on. On the night of our wedding, the crescent moon in the sky was bright and clear, creating a romantic atmosphere. Sweet and sweet, time was peaceful. At this point, the newlyweds should also stay in the wedding room. The groom lifted the bride's veil, and the bride raised her eyes and smiled. The two gazed at each other, affectionately and affectionately. Then, after drinking the Heyu wine, the two of them either became strangers at first glance or had a lifelong relationship. How many worldly ties, how many times do we look back, to cultivate this life's shared sleep? But now, covered in dirty black ash, she stands in a charred ruin, looking at the man in front of her, feeling both sad and comical. Whether King Jing intentionally teases her or is cold and ruthless towards her, even if they successfully reconcile in the future, what he does tonight will leave a scar in her heart. After all, the original owner has died, Fang Xiaoyu has fallen, and there is a wrongful death between the two. It is not something that can be put down. Liu Ruoyuan let out a faint sigh, his gaze streaming through the veil on his face, dim and unclear. Why does Prince Jing like to wear a hat veil? She secretly speculated that besides pretending to be mysterious and being struck by lightning, it was probably because he looked too ugly to be seen. It is rumored that King Jing has been a sickly child since childhood, and has rarely shown himself in public since childhood. The imperial physicians have diagnosed him with not living to be 16 years old. Later, in his 16th year, his condition suddenly worsened and he was on the brink of death. In the end, he relied on countless precious medicinal herbs to survive for 4 years. Now that King Jing is over 20 years old, with good health and ease of movement, he has finally survived this misfortune. The imperial physicians also say that he is lucky, and his life has finally been saved. Liu Ruoyuan secretly rubbed and glanced at him, feeling a strange feeling, both sympathetic and terrifying. A man with an ugly appearance who experienced the torment of illness when he was young. Although he held a noble position as a prince, he never enjoyed the happiness of a normal person. Others eat fragrant and spicy food, eat sweet and honey, he can only take medicine. Perhaps because of this reason, Prince Jing's heart was very dark and twisted, somewhat abnormal. He easily married a queen and didn't want her to calm down. It was best to suffer like him, so that he felt balanced in his heart. Ugly 8 monsters, bitter medicine jars, inner darkness, perversion. To be honest, it's not easy for King Jing to live. Liu Ruoyuan empathetically found reasons for a man's abnormality, ultimately due to childhood shadows. However, she also knew that Prince Jing, who had spent 4 years recuperating from illness, secretly cultivated his strength and raised secret guards and spies, was not as weak as he appeared on the surface. Ugly men often cause mischief, but black bellies hide evil intentions. This is an unchanging proverb for thousands of years. What are you thinking? The man's voice was low and full of a seductive magnetism. He saw the little woman in front of him staring at a pair of beautiful apricot eyes, sweeping back and forth on his hat veil, frowning and pondering, as if studying some incredible monster. His eyes sank, and a chilling chill suddenly spread everywhere. Liu Ruoyuan couldn't help but tremble all over. This aura is a bit scary. She remained focused and looked at Yun Zijin from top to bottom again. Probably in a hurry, the man was wearing only a soft silver blue silk robe, which was pressed against his exquisitely boned body, outlining the beautiful muscle lines of his shoulders and arms. The face is covered with a hat and veil, exuding a strong sense of arrogance and sharpness. With a restrained temperament, it is like an iceberg that can only be viewed from afar and cannot be played with. At first glance, there was a hint of wildness in the majestic and domineering aura, and it didn't seem ugly anymore. However, whether he is ugly or not has nothing to do with her. Anyway, she also needs to leave. She needs to withdraw as soon as possible and leave the perverted prince to other women to watch and study. Liu Ruoyuan made a conclusion to Yun Zijin in his heart, then shifted his gaze away and showed no interest in looking at him again. The two of them had no chance, why bother with him? I think whatever I want, and it doesn't take up any space in your home. You don't need to report it to the prince, she said lightly. Prince. To inform the prince, the flames have been extinguished, fortunately not harming anyone's life. The princess is blessed with a lot of blessings, and tonight she was startled. The prince needs more comfort, said the steward. His beard was burnt by the fire, scattered and looking very disheveled. After speaking, the steward's eyes fixed on the prince and the queen. Although one of them was wearing a bamboo hat and the other was disheveled, it made people inexplicably feel that they matched each other's faces. There was a hint of love and pity in the steward's eyes. Suddenly, the old lady possessed the attribute and began to worry mode. The night is so cold, and the prince didn't even have time to wear thick clothes for the queen. The queen's body is also thin, wearing so little. Go quickly and get the cloak for the prince and the queen. Don't freeze it out. The subordinates received orders and were busy getting their cloak. Yun Zijin remained silent, and his eyes behind the veil stared at Liu Ruoyuan, unsure of what he was thinking. Guardian. Can the prince make some noise and at least show concern? If you stick like this, will the queen run well? Liu Ruoyuan's eyes flickered and his eyebrows furrowed slightly. Thinking of Kai Ning, who was pretending to be a female ghost, he couldn't help but calculate in his heart that he was not safe yet. She wiped the cigarette ash off her face and said with a grievance, "It's very cold in the wing room, and they don't wear much." They wanted to make a brazier for warmth, but ended up burning the curtains. It's true to want to keep warm, and there are also plenty of reasons to set the house on fire. She's a stupid and foolish young lady, how could she ignite a fire pot? It's understandable if she's on fire. At this moment, she pretended to have a pitiful expression, her eyes very innocent. She glanced at the steward and then at Yun Zijin, which was very obvious. Sorry, Prince. They accidentally burned down the house. It wasn't intentional, everyone. Is the queen's fire pot lit with curtains? What should I say about her? This silly and cute princess is really going to lose to her. Yun Zijin pursed his lips and remained silent. For some reason, he felt that this woman was deliberately acting like a demon, pretending to be silly and full of boredom, as if she had some purpose. At this moment, Liu Ruoyuan pulled out a servant girl with a dark face beside him, his face full of joy, and he said happily, "Fortunately, I'm lucky. I was just catching up with a servant girl who saved my life." Caning lowered her head and hesitated for a moment before agreeing, "It's the princess who has great fortune. I just helped her." If it weren't for the princess being clever and leaving early with her, the steward would have caught the female ghost she was pretending to be when he brought someone to put out the fire. Playing the role of a female ghost to murder the queen is undoubtedly a capital crime. Caning's eyes flickered, her emotions were complex and uneasy. She couldn't understand why the queen and she didn't know each other, so why did she have to help her? After tossing around for most of the night, the butler ordered someone to clean up the remnants, and Chu Yi helped Liu Ruoyuan return to the room to take a shower and change clothes. Yun Zijin also brought people back to the fish and wild goose pavilion, and no one dared to mention the matter of praying for King Jing's blessings. In a warm room, Liu Ruoyuan was soaking in hot water covered with petals, relaxing all over and feeling comfortable. He couldn't help but hum the little song he used to sing. The past is gone, everything that has passed is gone. Let's completely put it aside. No matter how unfortunate Liu Ruoyuan may be in this life, her identity is 100 times stronger than Jinga's. After all, she has parents, younger siblings, and a wealthy and powerful family to rely on. She is the eldest daughter of the Liu family, with impeccable status, age, and appearance. Thinking of this, Liu Ruoyuan pursed a smile at the corner of her mouth, her eyes shining brightly. She was still happy, and at this moment, she really looked forward to her future life. Chi was waiting beside her, full of confusion, staring straight at her. "Miss, tonight is too abnormal. The things she does and the words she says seem to be different from what she used to be, leaving people puzzled. Is it because of severe emotional stimulation that one's temperament undergoes a drastic change?" After a while, Chi couldn't help but ask cautiously, "Miss, did you hang and set fire again tonight? Are you trying to play hard to get?" Liu Ruoyuan was stunned and said, "What is playing hard to get? To whom do we indulge in the pursuit of capture?" Chi saw that she was silent and thought she guessed right. Her eyes lit up with a glint of gossip. She excitedly said, "I knew you really liked Prince Jing. During the Lantern Festival, you ran into Prince Jing on the street. After you returned to your mansion, you were restless and I noticed. Miss is actually very willing to marry Prince Jing, isn't she? You deliberately hung and burned the house to test Prince Jing's intentions." Liu Ruoyuan was suddenly confused, and an incredible surprise exploded from her heart. What kind of lantern festival, what kind of chance encounter, what kind of restlessness, what kind of liking Prince Jing is there such a thing? Why doesn't she remember at all? Isn't Prince Jing gloomy and abnormal? How could she possibly like him and be willing to marry him? Liu Ruoyuan calmed down and carefully recalled, finally searching for some scattered scenes in his memory. Last autumn, during the Lantern Festival, Liu Ruoyuan and his siblings went out to admire lanterns and accidentally met Min Wang Yunsai and Jing Wang Yunzijin. Because of Liu Ruoyuan's stunning appearance, she attracted the attention of many people on the street. At that time, the crowd was bustling, and she was accidentally squeezed in front of two princes. In the chaos, Yun Zijin inexplicably pushed her and even stepped on her. She couldn't stand steadily and almost fell, only to be supported by Yun Sai next to her, and then amidst the dim lights, Miss Liu suddenly lifted her eyes and saw Yun Sai's warm and jade-like smiling face, which was instantly stunning. With a glance at Wan Nian, her heart was pounding wildly. Liu Ruoyuan slammed his forehead and finally remembered that all the enmities and grievances between Miss Liu and Prince Jing started with Yun Zijin's kick. Since the lantern appreciation, the figure of Yun Sai has been hidden in the original owner's heart, but her young girl's mind is shy and secretive, afraid to confide in others. Until she was betrothed to Prince Jing, on the day of her wedding, when she learned that Prince Min married Princess Mei on the same day, her heart was filled with despair. And then there was the scene of hanging the bridal chamber on a night of candles and flowers. Liu Ruoyuan suddenly realized that there was a hidden truth behind the original owner's hanging, and it was so convoluted. But why did Prince Jing marry the original owner? Is it because during the Lantern Festival, he stepped on her and felt a sensation? End of this chapter. Chapter 6. The Prince's Hard Work. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. The prince's hard work amidst the hot air emanating from the bathtub. Liu Ruoyuan pondered and clarified the causes and consequences of the situation. The original owner had a secret crush on Yun Sai, hiding it in his heart and not daring to say it. At the same time, he was very disgusted with Yun Zijin, so he often nagged and complained. As a result, the maid Chi misunderstood and thought that the young lady liked Yun Zijin. Liu Ruoyuan sneered inwardly, "Oh, how could a woman like Yun Zijin? He's the number one person in the world, okay?" In the Fish and Wild Goose Pavilion, thousands of people suspected that Yun Zijin was leaning on a soft couch, flipping through the brochures in his hands under the candlelight. The booklet recorded the trivial matters of the queen, big and small, including her temperament and preferences, and he frowned more and more as he looked at her. Is Liu Ruoyuan really foolish like this? He slept soundly while reading, pulled the strings while playing the piano, blackened his face when painting, pricked his fingers when embroidering. I have memorized a female motto 2,000 times, starting from 3 years ago and not even on my wedding day. 2,000 times. Looking at this amazing number, Yun Zijin couldn't help but take a cold breath and his forehead hurt. And, what are all her preferences? Eating dim sum, drinking, wandering, playing with birds. The most terrifying thing is that this foolish Liu Ruoyuan is the queen he married back to. Ha! He let out a long breath, can't do it anymore, almost depressed. Guard Ruoyuan stood next to him and couldn't wait to report. I just heard it clear that the queen really likes the prince, so she indulged in hard to get and hung and burned the house to test the prince's intentions. Just as he finished eavesdropping on Chi's conversation with the princess, he excitedly ran over to report to the prince. For the prince, this is a great joy. The 100-year-old iron tree is blooming, and the prince is also welcoming spring. Yun Zijin paused while flipping through the brochure and frowned. I've only seen it once during the Lantern Festival, and she likes me. He had a slight impression that time. At that time, the street was full of people, and he wore a hat and veil. He saw a beautiful woman with a beautiful appearance, who was the Miss Liu Ruoyuan of the Shangshu mansion. But he didn't even show his face. How did Liu Ruoyuan fall in love with him? Is it because of his unique temperament? The queen has so much insight. No one in the capital can match the wisdom of our queen's eyes. The steward was also deeply moved upon hearing this news, and almost burst into tears. The noble ladies in the capital either adore the crown prince or have all their hearts set on marrying into the Prince Min's mansion, leaving only the quiet and deserted front of the Prince Jing's mansion unattended. Due to King Jing's weak health, even the imperial physician called him a short-lived person, and for so many years, no woman came to visit him voluntarily. When young ladies mention Prince Jing, they tend to bypass the topic, let alone like him. The steward felt happy for his own prince, and finally, a woman liked the prince. Our Prince Jing's mansion is going to be proud, and we will never be inferior again. What is the crown prince? What's so remarkable about Prince Min? Our prince married the most beautiful woman in Dingyun Kingdom. Liu Ruoyuan was originally one of the 3 beauties of Dingyun Kingdom, but because he liked his family's prince, he was immediately promoted to first place by the steward. Beautiful and kind-hearted, our queen is the most beautiful woman in Dingyun Kingdom. Yun Zijin became even more depressed. Was he happy to be liked by a foolish woman? He took a deep breath, and the scene of the night of the Lantern Festival inexplicably came to his mind. She stood in front of a lantern, blooming a charming smile, as if a little girl was acting coquettishly. Although he is a fool, there is also something cute about him. His black and white eyes curved, revealing a hint of tenderness. The steward completely did not understand the complex thoughts of his prince, and continued to be overjoyed. He rubbed his hands vigorously and excitedly said, "The queen can see our prince is abundant and handsome, as well as the ice-capped temperament that is difficult to deal with. This is not an ordinary woman's insight." Yun Zijin frowned and said, "It doesn't sound like good words." He coughed lightly, his eyes lowered, and said calmly, "Don't let anyone know about this matter for now. The mastermind behind the assassination of the Guanhua festival has not been found yet, and I don't want any extramarital affairs to happen at this time. Not letting anyone know is mainly because of self-esteem and not wanting to be ridiculed. If the news spreads and everyone in the capital knows that Liu Ruoyuan doesn't like him, then the consequences are unimaginable. How many people will chew their tongues after tea and dinner? The queen likes him, so it's good to know a few people secretly, let alone he's not the kind of shallow man who likes to show off his love in a high-profile way. The prince is guarding the clouds until the moon shines." The steward was still immersed in great joy, imagining the scenes of the prince and the queen's future love. Before the flowers and under the moon, the prince smiled and hugged the queen. The queen punched the prince with a small powder fist, blushing and bowing her head. The steward felt a surge of excitement in his heart. This scene was too emotional. Ruoyuan was also very hopeful and couldn't help but chuckle, saying, "Prince, please work hard. By this time next year, the royal family will be able to add a young prince." Yun Zijin said. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Encounter is Fate. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Encounter is Fate. The sun was shining brightly, and on the magnificent carriage, Yun Zijin wore a bamboo hat and light veil, sitting upright and exuding a cold and majestic aura. Liu Ruoyuan sat opposite him, dressed in a red embroidered attire, with a pair of big black eyes staring at him. "Last night, I slept comfortably on the soft big bed all night. Today, my energy has recovered and my mood has improved greatly." So at this moment, she looked at Prince Jing with great interest. He had just been reborn and was also idle. She glanced at him more and didn't charge any money anyway. However, Prince Jing's aura was too fierce and domineering, giving him a feeling that he could only be seen from afar and not be played with. Even though he couldn't see his face, his body was surrounded by a sharp and cold temperament, and he was tightly grasped without any gaps. As Liu Ruoyuan looked at him, he pondered in his heart, isn't he pretending to be weak? Where is he weak? It's like a cold and dense ice sculpture, and even a little closer can give rise to chilblains. Yun Zijin remained calm and his mood was a bit gloomy. He was still replaying a scene from last night's dream in his mind. The princess in the dream had a dark face, a small white tooth on her face, and an expression like an idiot. He smiled and said, "Prince, I like you." Then the terrifying woman pounced on him, and he woke up in fear and never fell asleep again. He pursed his lips and looked up at her, feeling a complex feeling in his heart. This woman, the young girl in front of her, had skin that was more beautiful than snow. Her beautiful apricot eyes sparkled with a hint of mischievous and provocative expression, shining with a meandering radiance. Her small chin slightly raised, and her pink cherry lips pouted, giving off a feeling of purity and desire. The man's eyes were dim and unclear, and he silently closed them for a while. Think about the turmoil last night and the situation in his dream. He was mentally exhausted and didn't want to take another look at her. Liu Ruoyuan stared fixedly at Prince Jing, and when he saw his body tense, his fists clenched, and a posture that kept people away from thousands of miles, he suddenly burst into a cold smile in his heart. "Disdain me." Last night, the prince's mansion prayed for blessings and burned down the house. It was extremely lively. This prince wouldn't have been so excited that he didn't sleep all night, so he came early in the morning to add traffic. She was easily reborn. Her original plan was to deal with the crown prince's faction and bring him down, but she didn't expect to get entangled with Prince Jing first and fight fiercely. When she goes to the palace later, she is bound to abandon this prince in front of the emperor, so she will hold back for a while. After today, she will have no further involvement with Prince Jing. Thinking of this, Liu Ruoyuan simply closed his eyes and ignored Yun Zijin. Isn't it just playing with coldness and unfathomability? What's so difficult? Miss, let me show you who is colder and who is more unfathomable than whom. The car was silent, and neither of them spoke. The carriage walked slowly, swaying back and forth, and Liu Ruoyuan vaguely felt a little hungry. She got up late this morning. She didn't have breakfast and was eager to dress up to enter the temple. So she asked her first clothes to prepare glutinous rice pastries, wrapped them in handkerchiefs and hid them in her skirts. She planned to go hungry on the way. But at the moment, she and Yun Zijin are both holding the shelf, cold all over, and a solemn atmosphere in the car. Is it a bit not very temperament to eat glutinous rice cakes at this time? Liu Ruoyuan was hesitating when the carriage suddenly shook. She didn't pay attention and rushed forward. Yun Zijin looked at the princess about to pounce on him and suddenly turned aside. Ouch! Liu Ruoyuan threw herself on the doorboard, gave her chest a cough, and the glutinous rice cakes in her skirt was flattened. The carriage returned to normal, and she sat back in her seat. She angrily glanced at Yun Zijin and then, under his incredible gaze, pulled out a ball of something from her chest. Anyway, it's all broken. Let's eat it first before we talk. Yun Zijin said. Would you like to have a taste? It's delicious. Liu Ruoyuan unfolded her handkerchief and squeezed 4 glutinous rice cakes into a lump. Red, green and yellow were mixed together, so she could not see what it was. There was a strange sweet smell wafting from the carriage, and Yun Zijin pursed his lips tightly, suppressing the urge to jump off the carriage. Liu Ruoyuan didn't care at all and ignored him at all. He stuffed a soft lump of food into his mouth and nodded, muttering, "It's so delicious. The prince really has no appetite." The face behind the bamboo hat and light veil became even worse. After a moment of silence, the man tightened his hands and leaned towards the carriage, trying to stay as far away as possible from her. Liu Ruoyuan. That's too much. Are you intentionally hurting my self-esteem by doing this? Her good mood soon became bad. She pulled down her face and ate the glutinous rice cakes silently. The carriage began to shake again, and outside came the voice of Ruoyuan. There were many ditches dug on the road, making it difficult for the carriage to travel. The prince and queen endured it for a while, and after this stretch of road, they will arrive at the palace. Yun Zijin let out a deep breath, endured for a while, and soon arrived. Liu Ruoyuan glanced at him with resentful eyes. She had already arrived at the palace so quickly, and she hadn't explained it to the Black Heart Prince yet. The king of Lu Jingwang didn't talk to her or give her a good look. Just now, he deliberately hid from her, which made her even squash glutinous rice cakes. It's really annoying. Is bullying her a fool? The rabbit will bite even when it's in a hurry. The carriage shook violently, and a faint medicinal aroma wafted from Yun Zijin's body. After special training in his past life, Liu Ruoyuan had a very sensitive sense of smell and immediately smelled the scent of Qingma Dan. Her eyes suddenly lit up, and Prince Jing wore Qingma Dan on his body. This Qingma pill is made from Qingma medicine on Yuesian Island, which is extremely precious and rare. The reason why she knows the taste of this pill is because there was a strange scholar from outside the region who offered a pill to the crown prince, and she had seen it with her own eyes. Qingma Dan is only the size of a soybean seed, but it has a miraculous effect on the body. It is said that taking one pill can prevent all kinds of poison and greatly increase internal strength. Encountering such a good thing is fate, don't miss it. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Believing in Those Lies. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Believing in those lies. In front of us is a towering palace wall, and we can vaguely see the buildings and palaces within the wall. Liu Ruoyuan saw through the thin veil in front of the carriage window that the palace was about to arrive. If he didn't take action, he would miss the good opportunity, and it would be difficult to take action again in the future. She felt a bit anxious in her heart. However, she had the best way of dealing with men. She rolled her eyes twice and had already come up with a good idea in her mind. She glanced sideways at Yun Zijin. A certain prince inexplicably felt a wave of panic and immediately became alert. What does her gaze mean? What exactly does she want to do? Do you want to wipe that lump of thing onto my king? He tightened his collar and sat more upright, with a posture of being on guard against villains. This move clearly showed his timidity, and his high-ranking and domineering iceberg temperament just now disappeared. Liu Ruoyuan was holding a half-piece of glutinous rice cakes in her hand, pretending to be happy, when the carriage suddenly flashed. The weather was favorable, the place was harmonious, and she took advantage of the opportunity to jump into the man's arms. Yun Zijin didn't expect the surprise attack to come so quickly. He wanted to dodge but didn't, only to see the sticky substance on Liu Ruoyuan's hand rubbing against his clothes, and his whole body suddenly stiffened. My calm face could no longer be tense, and my expression suddenly cracked open. I said coldly, "Don't touch me, sit away honestly." But the foolish woman didn't seem to understand what he was saying. She kept reaching out and wiping her hands, saying, "Prince, how sticky your hands are. Your sleeves are made of good material. Can you borrow me to wipe your hands?" Yun Zijin said, "The material of my clothes is good, it's not for wiping your hands." Yun Zijin wanted to push her away more and more, but couldn't, or subconsciously didn't want to push her away. The woman was like an octopus, tightly clinging to him, while also smearing the rouge and sticky rice residue from her mouth onto his clothes. The carriage stopped steadily in front of the palace gate, and the nerves of a certain prince inside the carriage had reached their limit. The little woman got up from his arms with an innocent and aggrieved expression on her face. "Prince, you are so cruel to others," she complained softly, her eyes filled with resentment. Yun Zijin said, He felt his breath unstable and couldn't help but take a deep breath. Then he looked up at her with a hint of intimidation in his tone, "Don't do this again next time." After saying it, "I feel something is wrong. How could there be another time?" The little woman shook her head like a tambourine, then showed a curious and guarded expression on her face. "Prince, you're panting so hard, your body seems a bit weak." Yun Zijin said, He really wants to find a piece of tofu, hold down her little head, and hit her dead on it. At this point, more than a dozen carriages had already parked on the broad square, each of them luxurious and extraordinary, all of whom were the nobles and ministers who were going to the palace this morning. Liu Ruoyuan got off the car first and slowly let go of his long breath, with a proud expression on his face. It was really thrilling just now. But hard work pays off for those who have a heart, and finally succeeded, allowing her to get it. Qingma pill, I will take it today. I will definitely not waste anything." She pretended to casually press her waist, which was a small porcelain bottle. The sealed mouth still couldn't conceal the medicinal aroma of Qingma Dan, which faintly emanated from her body. "We need to find a hidden place and solve Qingma Dan first. Although this thing is good, it cannot be hidden on the body for a long time as it can easily cause trouble. The safest and most reassuring way is to eat it into your stomach." "She's so clever." At this moment, a carriage drove from a distance, and Liu Ruoyuan's gaze swept over to see a magnificent purple-silver patterned carriage, pulled by 4 tall horses, slowly approaching. Crown Prince, Yun Zijin. Her heart sank instantly, her eyes fixed on a cold ice cone, wishing to immediately thrust into the carriage and pierce the heartless person's throat with a sword. The Crown Prince's carriage came to a stop, and Liu Ruoyuan's breathing intensified. He faintly heard laughter from men and women inside the carriage, and his heart was suddenly stabbed, feeling extremely painful. Once upon a time, Yun Zijin used to flatter Jinga by using sweet words in her ear, implying that she was the only woman he deeply loved. Perhaps he had no choice but to marry an original wife in the future, but the Crown Princess was just a decoration, and he would never have any affection for that woman. As for the other warblers, swallows, and swallows, they were like floating clouds in the sky, drifting back and forth. He had no interest in them, never cared about them, and had no intention of playing tricks on them back then. Innocent as her, she actually believed these lies. Liu Ruoyuan's heart tightly clenched into a ball, almost suffocating. She has saved the Crown Prince's life multiple times, using her flesh and blood to block his sword, testing his poison with her body, gathering intelligence for him, and paving a huge intelligence network for him in the capital. In order to help him achieve great things, she spared no effort to fall into the mortal world and stayed in the Chimo Red Mansion, pretending to be with those ugly men who were full of fat and perfunctory socializing. But what did she gain in the end after putting in so much effort and sacrificing so much? Are those sweet words and unforgettable memories in Yun Zijin's heart, scattered like clouds and smoke, leaving no trace? Once a scorching and passionate heart was drenched in a basin of icy water that was piercing through the bones, beating her head and face to the end, leaving nowhere to hide. She wanted to find an excuse for Yun Zijin, but unfortunately, he didn't even give her this opportunity. The misty gaze slowly withdrew, and Liu Ruoyuan pursed her lips, her eyes instantly becoming cold and resolute. Yun Zijin is not an easy person to deal with, and the matter of seeking revenge and debt still requires long-term consideration. Prince, the guards in front of the carriage suddenly whispered. At this moment, Yun Zijin lifted the curtain of the car and came down, his breath somewhat floating, and his footsteps stumbling. The guards on both sides were stunned. I saw the prince, who had always been calm and introverted, clenching his fists tightly, wearing a wrinkled silk and brocade robe. His chest and cuffs were smeared with red, green, and yellow. Some unknown thing still looked sticky, making it unbearable to witness. Ruoyuan was startled and quickly stepped forward to help him. His prince seemed to be standing unsteadily and a bit weak. Did he just be in the carriage? Uncontrollable thoughts began to flow in his mind, and Ruoyuan felt that the prince was different today, with a scorching heat emanating from all over his body. This situation he secretly glanced at the queen and felt secretly pleased. Sure enough, at this time next year, there is hope for the birth of the little prince. If I had known this, the carriage should have slowed down on the road just now, slowly. Emotions would have heated up, and it would have been better if the water flowed for a long time. The carriage is moving too fast, making his prince anxious and sweating profusely. Liu Ruoyuan stood by the carriage, feeling a gaze from the side of her face, making her feel a burning sensation. She turned her head and met Ruoyuan's gaze, who seemed to have done something wrong and quickly turned her head away. Liu Ruoyuan said, She furrowed her brow. Ruoyuan's gaze just now was strange. Why did it seem malicious? Is it possible that his prince has some kind of trap? Do you want to cheat again? Yun Zijin got off the carriage and saw everyone around him looking at him in surprise. He suddenly felt that he was not feeling well. He has lived for so many years, and he has never been so embarrassed before. Especially when he was in the carriage just now, he was touched all over by a foolish woman. It's unreasonable, it made him feel hot and uncomfortable all over, and then she turned around and got off the car, which was too irresponsible. Yun Zijin managed to calm his chaotic mind and looked up at the open palace gate, only to see the woman's figure in red drifting away, already walking towards the gate on his own. Liu Ruoyuan has a beautiful appearance, dressed in a magnificent red dress like embroidered clouds and clouds, adding to her unparalleled charm and attracting everyone's attention. The prince's cold and tense expression split open again. This bad woman has left on her own, not waiting for me to be with her. Prince! Prince! Ruoyuan urged anxiously, the princess has already left. We need to keep up quickly, otherwise people will chew their tongues behind their backs and say that your husband and wife are not compatible. Yun Zijin said, He suppressed an indescribable emotion, shook his sleeves, and coldly said, Go to the palace. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Unrealistic Fantasy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Unrealistic Fantasy. The inner garden of the palace is adorned with towering eaves and towering peaks, exuding a luxurious and majestic atmosphere. While Yun Zijin went to the dormitory to change clothes, Liu Ruoyuan sat alone in a side hall, sent out the palace maids he served, and quietly took out a small porcelain vase from his waist. Pouring Qingma Dan into her palm, it was the size of a soybean seed. She fixed her gaze and almost burst into laughter. 3 green foam pills, you've made a fortune this time. As long as she takes these 3 pills, she can embark on the path of cultivation. On the entire Moon Immortal continent, there are only a few cultivators, and that is a rare and proud existence. When she can cultivate, live a happy and joyful life, and reach the pinnacle of life, it's just around the corner. Without hesitation at all, Liu Ruoyuan quickly took a teacup and poured water, then purred and swallowed all 3 Qingma pills into his stomach. She was just hanging her heart in the air, and at this moment she finally settled down. She suddenly felt that the whole world had become safe, and every year was quiet, even the thrush singing outside the window was so beautiful. She clenched her hand, the small porcelain vase couldn't be left on her body. If it were caught by Yun Zijin, it would be difficult to explain. But there is still the medicinal aura of Qingma-dan in the small porcelain bottle. Don't underestimate this medicinal aura. If used in a timely manner, it can at least make people energetic and alert. It's a pity to throw it away directly. After careful consideration, Liu Ruoyuan pushed open the 2 windows and saw a bird cage hanging in front of them, inside which was a brightly feathered thrush bird. In her past life, as the first spy around the crown prince, she had learned many excellent skills, one of which was the oral technique of imitating the voices of various birds, animals, and humans. At this moment, there was no one on either side. Liu Ruoyuan clenched his lips and let out a chirping sound, trying to communicate with the thrush bird. The thrush bird in the cage heard a cry and was somewhat stunned. It immediately circled around in search of its own kind. The agile little head spun around for a while before realizing that the sound was coming from a human mouth, and suddenly became confused. Ah, not only human, but also a woman dressed in fancy clothes. The thrush bird was a bit depressed and called out, "Jojo," twice, roughly meaning, "This handsome guy only likes female birds and is not interested in women. Don't bother me, humph." It turned its head and back, with a proud and coquettish attitude, ignoring the woman. Liu Ruoyuan is too experienced in dealing with birds. In her previous life, she could even tame an eagle, let alone a small thrush locked in a cage. She chirped twice and said, "I have a small porcelain bottle of Qingma-dan in my hand. Drinking it with water can help me improve my health and make me smarter. Do you want it? If you don't want it, I'll give it to the green-headed parrot next door." Upon hearing this, the thrush bird immediately turned its head and stared at her with half a doubt. Human beings love to tease and deceive birds the most. I wonder if this woman is a scammer. Liu Ruoyuan filled a small porcelain bottle with some water and put it in a birdcage. After drinking this bottle, I guarantee you will be hearing and seeing clearly, with bright feathers and plump wings. You will become the most handsome and brave thrush bird in the imperial palace garden. The thrush bird took a sip of water in confusion, rolled its eyes twice, and suddenly felt a surge of heat flowing into its body. Wow, the goods are genuine and full of strength. It flapped its wings, lowered its head and drank water one by one, happily accepting the small porcelain vase. At this moment, a palace maid came to report that His Royal Highness Prince Jing had already changed his clothes and invited the queen to go with her to the empress's sleeping palace to pay her respects. The thrush bird saw Liu Ruoyuan about to leave and chirped in the cage, very reluctant to part with her. "Jujiujiu, this must be the most beautiful woman among humans. This handsome guy thinks she's very pleasing to the eye and really likes her." Liu Ruoyuan smiled and said goodbye to it. "Xiaomei, goodbye. I will have the opportunity to come and see you in the future. Remember, I am the beautiful and kind-hearted miss of the Liu family." The palace maid next to her saw this scene and her facial muscles twitched and almost petrified. She couldn't help but secretly curl her lips and looked very down on Liu Ruoyuan. It is said that the young lady of the Ministry of Rites Shangshu mansion is a fool, and indeed lives up to her reputation. She said goodbye to a foolish bird, and the entire Dingyun kingdom couldn't find a second one so foolish. In the palace garden, on a winding path, Liu Ruoyuan followed behind Yun Zijin and walked all the way towards the empress's dormitory. The pavilions, towers, water pavilions, and rockeries on both sides left her dazzled and amazed. No wonder everyone is vying to become the emperor. As long as you sit in the highest position of the entire palace, overlook the world, and give up who you are, a sense of superiority arises naturally. Becoming the ruler of the world, with power, wealth, and beauty in one's hands, is truly fascinating. This is her first time entering the palace, and it's rare to broaden her horizons. In his past life, as the chief flower leader of the Qimo Red Mansion in the capital, although he was sought after and admired by men, he did not have the opportunity to come to this deep palace garden. She looked around and felt very happy. It's better to be a queen, marry the emperor's son, and enjoy privileges. If I could be a princess for a lifetime, it would seem good. Thinking of this, Liu Ruoyuan suddenly regained his senses and suppressed the dangerous thoughts in his heart. The position of a princess is to be exchanged for one's wealth and life, it is not worth cherishing. She quickly set aside unrealistic fantasies in her mind and glanced up at the man in front of her. At this moment, the man turned around and couldn't see his expression clearly through the veil of a hat. He changed into a new garment, soft and gorgeous light blue brocade embroidered with silver thread, shining brightly in the sunlight, as if a man's whole body was shining. His skeleton perfectly supported the brocade clothes, appearing handsome and elegant, exuding an indescribable aura of luxury from his bones. Even if you can't see your face, just this slender waist, broad shoulders, slender legs, and tall and imposing posture makes people unable to take their eyes away. Liu Ruoyuan shook her lips, feeling a bit regretful. After all, she was going to break up. No matter how great the benefits of being a princess were, she would not be able to enjoy it. But for some reason, she suddenly felt a bit reluctant to leave Prince Jing. Is it because of beauty? Impossible, she is not such a shallow woman. Moreover, although King Jing has a beautiful figure, his face must be ugly beyond the sky. Why is she a bit reluctant to part? Probably because I ate his 3 precious Qingma pills, I feel a bit indebted to him in my heart. End of this chapter. Chapter 10 is a bit drifting. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 is a bit drifting, third brother. A young man suddenly jumped out of the nearby bamboo forest, wearing a light yellow brocade robe and a hat with a forehead, looking weak and helpless, with a timid and shy expression between his eyebrows and eyes. Liu Ruoyuan looked at it calmly and immediately recognized that it was the 7th Prince Yun Zijin. She had memorized a lot of intelligence information in her mind before, and all the backgrounds of several princes came to light. The current emperor has 4 sons, and his eldest son Yun Zijin was the legitimate son of the empress and was appointed as the crown prince. The second prince, Yun Zijin, was granted the title of Prince Min. His late biological mother was Nguifei, who was once a princess of Chenin Kingdom. During her lifetime, she was unparalleled in splendor and was highly favored. Unfortunately, she fell ill and passed away shortly after entering the palace. The third prince, Yun Zijin, was granted the title of Prince Jing. His birth mother was a noble concubine of the Qin dynasty, and he had a very cold temperament. He lived in the Dream Island garden of the royal palace outside the capital all year round, dedicated to praying for his son's blessings and eliminating disasters. The emperor also had 3 princesses, all of whom had already been married to neighboring countries. The youngest son was the 7th Prince Yun Zijin. The birth mother of the 7th prince was once a close mate of the Qin noble concubine, favored by the emperor. After giving birth to Yun Zijin, she was executed by the empress on the charge of seducing the lord with a fox. Empress Qing also broke ties with the empress over this matter and left the palace to live in the Dream Island garden. Yun Zijin lost his mother from a young age and was raised by palace officials. He was naturally cowardly and very timid, so he was not valued by the emperor and did not even have a title. After Prince Jing's condition improved, Yun Zijin gradually became closer to this third brother. At this moment, Yun Zijin grabbed Yun Zijin's sleeve and glanced timidly at Liu Ruoyuan, whispering, "Third brother, is this beautiful woman? Third sister. Law." Yesterday, the imperial family held a wedding banquet on a good day, and Prince Min and Prince Jing got married on the same day. Prince Min married Princess Mei of the regent's mansion, while Prince Jing married the eldest daughter of the Minister of Rights, Liu Ruoyuan. The royal family was blessed with double happiness, which has been a legend in the capital. Princess Mei has a rough and outgoing personality, often appearing on the streets and alleys of the capital, and many people have seen her appearance. And Liu Ruoyuan is a young lady from the Shangshu mansion who rarely goes out, and outsiders have hardly seen her. I only heard that she is as beautiful as a flower, but as stupid as a pig. No one knows what the real situation is. Upon hearing the word beauty, Liu Ruoyuan suddenly felt a good mood and had a good impression of the thin and shy young man in front of him. He smiled and said, I have heard that the seventh prince is intelligent and well-behaved, with a kind temperament. As expected, he really hit it off with you as soon as we met. Do you recognize the seventh prince? Asked the cold face behind the hat veil, feeling a little surprised. How could she recognize the young man in front of her as the seventh prince, as a young lady who usually doesn't leave the mansion? Liu Ruoyuan was slightly taken aback. She had seen a portrait of Yun Zijin before, and of course she could recognize it at a glance. Moreover, she was well aware of the daily preferences of the seventh prince. But the original owner doesn't know the seventh prince. She was secretly regretful. Just now, when she heard Yun Zijin praising her as a beauty, she suddenly felt a bit dizzy and forgot that the original owner was a big fool in the boudoir. He, everyone knows that there are only 4 princes in the palace, and he calls you third brother. He must be your only younger brother, seventh prince. Who can't guess such a simple relationship? I'm so smart, she said proudly. But besides this younger brother, I also have many cousins. When they meet me, they all call me third brother. How can you be certain that this is the seventh prince? Yun Zijin stared at her intently, his tone appearing aggressive. Liu Ruoyuan said, Are you fighting for reincarnation? Are you fighting against me? My younger brother. Liu Kongmu, who is studying with the prince in the palace, often mentions the seventh prince and has a portrait of him in his hand. I have read it many times and it makes me familiar, so I recognize the seventh prince at first glance. This is enough. Liu Ruoyuan quickly turned his head and thought of an excuse, explaining seamlessly. Yun Zijin narrowed his eyes and looked at her thoughtfully through the light veil of a bamboo hat. Yun Zijin next to him looked flattered and surprised. He had never been so valued by anyone since he was so big. Surprisingly, someone has seen his portrait many times, and he is also a top-notch stunning beauty. He immediately developed a liking for Liu Ruoyuan and felt a deep regret for meeting him too late. Yun Zijin blushed slightly and looked shyly at Liu Ruoyuan, nodding and whimpering, Kongmu is my good friend. He often talks about his 2 sisters in the family, one is a beautiful woman and the other is a talented woman. Of course, the great beauty is Liu Ruoyuan. As for the talented woman, she is the second miss of the Shangshu mansion, Liu Binggu, Liu Ruoyuan's sister. Yun Zijin was in a daze for a moment, pursed his lips, not knowing if he had believed Liu Ruoyuan, and turned to talk to Yun Zijin. Liu Ruoyuan secretly let go of his breath. It was too thrilling just now, almost revealing his true feelings. This dog man is so suspicious, he needs to be more careful in the future. Third brother said he wanted to give me Qingma pill, did he bring it this time? Yun Zijin tugged at Prince Jing's sleeve, relying heavily on his appearance, with a hopeful expression on his face. Liu Ruoyuan suddenly realized that Qingma Dan was going to be given to the seventh prince. Such a precious pill, just give it to someone casually. Prince Jing has such a big hand. Yun Zijin nodded slightly and said in a calm voice, this pill is indeed rare. You are still young, so I can only give you one. He raised his hand to touch the small porcelain vase in his arms, and was immediately stunned. His face changed color, and the Qingma Dan was missing. Immediately, he remembered that a foolish woman had touched him on the carriage, and he furrowed his brow and cast a sharp gaze at the woman. Liu Ruoyuan pretended to be bored and looked elsewhere, his gaze fixed on the flowers and plants, pretending to appreciate them. Anyway, this matter has nothing to do with her. She can't understand anything about Qing, Mo, or Dan. Don't look at me, I'm just a fool. Who knows what your 2 brothers are talking about? What's wrong with you, third brother? Did you forget to bring it? Yun Zijin asked timidly, with a hint of disappointment in her tone. He had been hoping for Qingma Dan for a long time. Last month, Prince Jing was assassinated during the fire-watching festival. This month, Prince Jing's mansion got married, and he was worried that his third brother might forget about it. I promise you something, and I will naturally do it. Yun Zijin took his hand back and said calmly, I came out in a hurry this morning and forgot for a moment. I'm going to pay my respects to my father later. You go back first, and I'll send someone to bring it to you another day. Yun Erzhao's temperament is very obedient. Seeing what Prince Jing said, he quickly nodded and said, then I'll wait for third brother in the palace. The seventh prince bowed and said goodbye, then greeted Liu Ruoyuan and turned around to leave. Yun Zijin turned his head and looked at Liu Ruoyuan with his eyes fixed on him. His cold and piercing aura grew stronger, and he reached out and said coldly, bring it. End of this chapter.